around talking to you in two parts. And the first part is looking really at our education system, predominantly in England in the initial part, although I will venture into Scotland and Wales in the latter half of the afternoon. And we've gone through some, what head teachers are calling quite turbulent times, particularly since 2008 when we had a change in government. And I think so far we've moved in our systems and our structures, and to a certain extent our curriculum, that it would be difficult to go back. So even if we get a Labour government in, we'll find it very difficult to go back to the way it was. And the way it was isn't necessarily a good thing, as you'll see, explore and discuss later on. What we are seeing in Wales particularly, they still have a very top-down, money-driven, incentive, infrastructure-led, policy-led directive from the Welsh Government. In Scotland, they're moving more away from that and more autonomy to schools. But in England, we've moved completely away from that, and autonomy is completely at school level. Now that brings some joys, but it also brings some risks that, again, we'll explore. But what all four countries, Southern Ireland won't thank me for that, but there we go, are doing well, I think, is that the education system is being driven by head teachers. Those that are working at government have high education head teacher boards, and you'll see in England throughout this presentation it is driven predominantly by head teachers and school leaders, and it's flipped from government to heads, and everyone is very mindful of that. If heads don't like you at the moment, you are gone very, very quickly. So I'll talk you through the English context, looking at really leadership, changes in our leadership structure, what that means in schools and on the ground when support is taken away and more funding is given to you and more freedoms are given to you. And then we'll have a comfort break, and then we will look at the latter part of today, the area that I'm probably better known for in terms of technology and new technologies and how we're working. So let's have a look at who's talking to you and where I've come from. I've been in education now. I was a senior leader in primary, middle, special schools. I didn't become a head teacher. I stopped at deputy, and I went to work for local authorities advising on literacy and numeracy. I had a keenness, and I think I was probably a nerd, in technology, so I wrote some technology teaching programs that are still available online and free, and can be used in any language because they're also mathematics where I come from. And I got taken on board by the national strategies to bring interactive whiteboards into the country. And that was 2003, and we began with 60 interactive whiteboards. Within 1 year, because of the impact we'd shown on predominantly boys writing, but other areas as well, Charles Clarke, the then minister, gave us £15 million to kickstart interactive whiteboards in every school, and within 18 months they were in every single school, not every single classroom in every school, but they were in 23,000 schools across the country. Too quick, in my opinion, by the way, because it tended to move away from the focus of developing a pedagogy, and actually the focus was on the gravy boat interactive whiteboards, with software companies producing endless PowerPoints after PowerPoints after PowerPoints that stopped you talking and stopped children learning. So something that we need to be careful of, but a little bit too quick and rapid. I then found that actually that went nowhere without leadership. You could have the most passionate teacher in the world, and when they go, it's gone. Without the leadership and the infrastructures and the ability to capture that excellence and share that excellence across the board, it went nowhere very quickly, and it was a vast investment in time. So I then, again geeky, wrote a piece for the National College for School Leadership, and then was asked to take on board their leadership programme for head teachers in terms of IT. And this was at a time, 2004, when we were halfway through, I think, one of the largest investments in technology that any country for our size has made. We had one-to-one provision for teachers, we had laptops in schools, we had virtual learning environments, you name it, we had it, and you'll see it. at BET. I know you're going to BET on Thursday. I'll also give you an insider's view of BET so you don't get cahoodled by the salespeople and seduced by the flashy lights. And SLICT, we managed to get, our target was 10,000 school leaders in 3 years, and we managed to bring on board 13,000 school leaders in that 3 years, which is over 55% of our school leader estate. Then, never bored, the government decided that we could have 65 billion to invest in new school environments. I won't say new school buildings. Architects were having parties left, right and centre and champagne going for quite a while, and we had lovely auditoriums and schools built like boats, but you'd walk in and you'd be sitting on a £6 chair all day. So we then grabbed hold of that and worked with the majority of local authorities. So the points I come from and the points to ask questions on, I suppose, is the leadership aspect to a level, the technology and the environment and what that can have on schools. So if any one of you want to pick my brains on that, you're welcome. 4 years ago, most of the government agencies dissipated in some form or another, and the autonomy went directly to schools, and we got different models of schools that I'll talk you through later on. We now have more models of schools than I can even list on a single PowerPoint, and different types of schools for different types of children and different types of environment. And now, as you can see the landscape, this is where our work is very different. I work setting up new schools called free schools, university technical colleges, which is a 14 to 19 specialist, studio schools, which again are similar but very work-based. I also work with academy trusts. We'll look at the model for academy trusts, but academy trusts are now turning into multiple academies. So the head teachers are becoming chief executives of 1, 3, 9, 25 chains of schools very, very quickly. And because the local authorities aren't there, they need different types of support. We also run some national programmes specifically for ICT for head teachers, and we are not sponsored by any body. Now this is predominantly because the other director's got a bigger mouth than me, so we'd get into trouble if we were sponsored by anybody, because we respect the fact that there's very little independent advice out there for school leaders, and as you'll see on Thursday, there's a very heavy push from companies trying to sell. So actually we give a very independent advice across there and work with, I think we've worked with 5 different regions in the last 2 months to get their ICT strategies together. And finally I work at government level in Wales, a little bit in Scotland, but predominantly Wales, looking at their ICT strategy and their professional development programmes for the next 3 years as they enter into this heavy life cycle. On my private life, this is sad, private life, is I'm trustee and director of 2 children's charities. The first one is Student Voice, which is a lobbying charity for children, and the second one is a community college led that earns £5 million a year, and through that we buy looked after children aged 16 places to live, because we've got children in our colleges that are living on the streets at the moment, so we use that to do that. So very passionate about actually the voice of the learner, which I hope will come through today. Again, if you're looking at large scale things, this is the scale that we went to, 50 million, and it went, well, as I say, to 23,000 schools for interactive whiteboards, and for strategic leadership there was a tipping point around here, is where I came. So you've got to blow your own trumpet sometimes. But again, there were different strategies to share best practice there. The reason this was so poor in terms of take-up initially is that the college that was doing it, the National College for School Leadership, it was the best kept secret in the world. It was theirs, they were going to protect it, nobody should know about it in terms of competition, but that meant nobody knew about it in terms of head teachers as well. So the first thing we did was gave it away to everybody, and that encouraged them to come on board. But different models and different strategies to keep that network going throughout. And in that programme we always used head teachers to work with head teachers. Although I'm not practising what I preach, I think it should always be head teachers talking to head teachers, because you're under similar challenges and institutions. And then finally, the most difficult programme that we did which was building schools for the future. And this was difficult not in terms of the fact that we had to look at design and what works well, and Ken Fisher and Ken Robinson and others, and bringing in that design aspect to actually look at learning, not at buildings. What made a difference on learning? And design makes more difference on learning than ICT, and some researchers would say teachers as well, but I'll hold judgment on that one. But actually the problem there was that the government took it in as local authority. So it took every local authority. So it took Birmingham, and it expected all the head teachers in Birmingham to agree with each other, and then to agree with the local authority. Now typically our head teachers have never agreed with local authorities, so this was a problem in itself. But out of that came some quite good learning in terms of how to collaborate and how not. Schools now have greater autonomy, but at the time they had to work with a variety of partners. And again, that caused problems in terms of capacity to move things forward. On an average government initiative, a secondary head teacher used to tell me it would take 6 to 8 people to look at it for at least the first year to get it implemented into an 800 to 10,000. That's 1,000, isn't it? I'm a mathematician. To go through. So quite complex, and now the situation has changed dramatically. That was a very experienced head teacher at the time of the latest initiative, said, you know, it's a torturous journey that we've got to go on, but it's actually knowing what we've got to pack that's going to be useful. And I think that's all we can do with leadership, because it's very much dependent on the area that you're in, but actually we can pick advice from those that have gone through similar experiences and learn from the pitfalls, but also the gains as we move forward. So it's the only way I can describe it. For the government agencies, it was like somebody had died very close to them for about 6 months. Everyone was in depression. And for schools, it was utter chaos. So in 2008, this was the picture. Department for Education at the top. Teaching and learning was covered by the national strategies. Leadership was covered by the National College. Technology by Bector, and Bector was 200 people. Curriculum by QCA, and anything to do with buildings by Partnerships for Schools. So whatever aspect of school life you were looking at, somebody was giving you advice, somebody was giving you guidance, somebody was providing the professional development, normally free for you as well. Underneath that sat local authorities and county councils. And underneath that sat 3 different types of schools. Primary, secondary, special, and we did have the odd academy. And our academies in those days were city technical colleges that were for children that weren't achieving in mainstream schools. Government came in and scrapped local authorities very quickly, and last year there were 2,600 new academies. This year there's over 6,000 academies. So we are coming to a point where we've got a very strong tipping point. Now in 2008, before all these changes happened, it was estimated that, well, research, OECD 2008, that the head teachers in England made more decisions than anywhere else except for the Netherlands. So that was the issue number 1, that head teachers felt they were already taking too much on board. Issue number 2 is the graph below shows the demographics of our head teachers during that period. And we had and still have a real issue in England in the fact that we're not making head teachership attractive. We're making it too risky, too much accountability, and too much pressure. So we were getting a point that our older head teachers were nearing retirement, but there was nobody coming up underneath. So we had to concentrate for the last 6 years on developing middle-level leaders. During that period as well, this is what happened. So we moved from all those government agencies down to 2 executive agencies, which are part of the department, and a few schools left. And what came was what we're going to look at later, which is these new types of academies with new types of curriculum, and we're growing ever more in terms of what they mean. So we went from this Department of Education, all those bodies in the middle tier, providing support, guidance, professional development with local authorities. They all went very rapidly, some within 6 months, and in replacement of those 3 institutions were formed 2 government agencies. So now we're in a very different position than we were 4 years ago. There is no national professional development. There's very limited. It's tendered out to different countries, and the National College, rather than delivering training, actually tenders out any training that it needs. And whereas these agencies acted independently, they're now taken right into the department. So again, it's a lot of sticks and not a lot of carrots. Which has meant that the schools that we end up with are multiple. These are some of the types we've got now: primary, secondary colleges, special, faith, academies, for all of the above. Free schools. If you're a group of parents now in England, you can get together and propose a new school in your area. Even if there are successful schools in your area, you can propose a new school. As long as you get the signatures in terms of demand, the government will give you money to build a new school. University technical colleges, we have an issue here. I'm not sure what it's like in your countries, but we have graduates leaving university and 60% unemployment for the first 4 years. So our route into the workplace is very, very challenging at the moment. And part of that is that we deliver a content curriculum, and actually the students aren't ready for the workplace. Particularly in some of the skill sectors, the high-end ICT sectors, the engineering sectors, the health sectors. And what we're finding in a recession environment is that people don't want to employ people that can't run with the job straight away. They want experience somewhere else. So we're having huge high unemployment. So university technical colleges and studio schools were designed to bridge that gap between school and the workplace, and pupil referral units as well. Those are the organisations that have sprung up to support these schools. Some slightly funded, the majority not. But the one I relate well up to, if I may be so crude, is the Independent Academies Association, which is purely a group of head teachers that have been long-standing academies, that during the time of political change decided to get together and stand up. So they're not only a lobbying group, but they're also, because they know they're growing from 400 to what will be 23,000 in the next couple of years, that they also need that professional development, that capacity building, that innovation to keep on top. So they've joined together to provide a network, an umbrella, similar to yourselves but with a tighter geography, I think, in terms of how to continuously move forward to stay ahead of the game. And the different types of head teachers that we're getting as well. I'll go into some of the freedoms that academies get, just so that you can compare to your own shortly. But we now have very, very different types of head teachers. And a head teacher in a small primary will obviously be very different to a head teacher that's running 23 academies across the channel. So school leaders, head teachers are in our state schools. Academy principals and executive head teachers and executive chairs of governors will be in our academies. And we are now beginning to see more and more school business managers, the accountants of schools, actually taking the role as headship. Now, there are different views on whether that's right or whether that's wrong. Some of these people think they have to manage businesses because they're so large. Some people think no matter how large, and it should be a teacher that's always leading a school. I think I'm probably on the latter. But that just gives you a little bit of information as to where we are. Okay, I'm going to stop talking for 2 seconds. First, 2008 we had more responsibilities. We had different problems in terms of the demographics and the fact that we would and have got schools with no headship at all. But when all of these heads were surveyed in 2012 in terms of what their priorities were, they were relatively similar. And in the next slide I'm going to show you the top 5 priorities identified by UK schools. But for now, I just actually want to give this point so you can discuss on your table and feedback to me what your top 5 priorities are at the moment in terms of your school. So I'll just leave you for 5 minutes and then we'll take some feedback. your top priorities as a school leader in your schools at the moment.
Well, first one, not necessarily the order has to do with the priority, right?
Yep.
With the topic we discussed. So we thought about presenting an attractive educational project for the community, which has to do with the demands and the needs of the place.
Yeah.
Higher? To select and keep a team of highly qualified and motivated teachers and update them and try to keep them with the highest possible commitment and engagement with the educational project. Also to understand the needs of the community and reflect them or make them clear in your school project. So again, to meet the demands of the community. Comply with the local policies, or I don't know how they call them here, but so that your students can get the degrees or whatever they need to.
Policies and qualifications.
Yeah, exactly. And then the last one had to do with listening and adjusting. And that has to do with develop some kind of leadership strategies to be kind of a moderator between students' interests, parents' demands, teachers' needs, and kind of a balance between those three parties, let's say, families, students, and teachers.
I like the listening and adjusting.
That's it.
Not that you all shouldn't have a star. I'm going to star one of those. Thank you. Thank you. Table at the back.
We have different positions, you know. One of them is, one of us said, to be alive at the end of the day, the first priority.
I might not help with that.
After that, mainly, yeah. Well, my personal opinion is I have to have students, you know, enough. The right teacher, as she said before, right degrees and courses in order to cover the labor market, national and international. Of course, to have an excellent work team, self-motivator, innovator, etc. And I need a support here.
And the decision maker.
Huh?
Decision.
Decision making.
Yes, decision maker. I think it's very important.
So having the leadership and that is that support for the decision makers as well. Is there much support for decision makers?
I think it's important because sometimes head in the school are more almost static in the situation. So to take decision is very important. To take the risk of the decision.
So decision makers and making informed risk,
Yes.
informed judgment on
Yes.
risk.
Proactive.
Thank you.
And in all the schools there are very different students, and we think that we have the responsibility to create more and more opportunities for all the different students. And
So personalising
Yes.
learning.
yes, and prepare them for the future as a persons, as a gentlemen, and
Ladies too.
they are, because they are inside the communities, and it's very important that they can work for the community. Another opinion?
Yes, that's
I didn't mean that to just say gentleman work. That was my notes to get for later. But again, it's that social responsibility
Social
as well as
responsibility.
giving them the skills to achieve. Yeah, take that. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I will say, as my colleague, to have a good team of teachers and train them. Then we insist on infrastructures and resources.
Yeah.
And then we make it a focus. I mean, I'm talking about France, where Jewish community demands for higher education in Jewish environment, which doesn't exist, and the quality and results at national exams. And we talk about the social responsibility, as some colleagues did. And we also insist on the number of the students to increase, to have more and more students. Yeah.
And does the funding follow the students, so it's important to be full?
Yeah.
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 So attracting students.
Mm-hmm.
That, is it,
with good results in quality.
That's a big issue for our
Yeah.
schools at
Yes.
the moment.
Yeah.
Big issue. So much so that our schools are employing marketing teams. It's one of the big areas that they spend money on, which is advertising and marketing, which
Yeah.
is unusual compared to how it used to be. Thank you. Let me just... Now, I'm keeping these on the floor for a reason, so I can summarise them and make sense.
One.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
Everyone already said what
No.
you
No, I made a friend at lunchtime, so it's my security table, so I just thought it was fine. I've got someone to smile at, and I forgot him. Sorry. Thank you. One more.
Well, to get students, that's the first priority, and of course to keep the good staff, the one with, the motivation, the training. We thought of the relationship between the school and all the other actors in the arena, like the
Community.
the acknowledgement of the community, the reputation of the school, and of course the fifth priority is to establish a well-defined identity for the school and for the educational deed.
So culture, ethos, and identity for that place.
And we spoke about the soul of the school, the soul of the...
And I wrote that down there. I was again, is that what does this place look like, but what does it feel like as well?
We said that if the ultimate goal of education is to bring up the worthy man or in the worthy society, so the fifth priority should meet this goal. I mean, at least the fifth priority.
Worthy citizens that put back in and so sustainability of cultures and beliefs and ways of working whilst achieving excellence as well at the same time. Thank you very much. I might forget you again. I'll start with you next time. Okay, so excuse me peering over here while I talk to you. But the majority mentioned students. You might think I'm surprised at that, but the majority are sort of focused on the students, the community, the connectedness. I must admit, I don't very often hear the listening and adjusting and the heart and the soul of the schools very often when I ask that question, and that seems to have come back more from this group than when I normally ask those questions. I should be using listening and adjusting in my presentation next day. Teachers and teacher retention, is that an issue? That's an issue in some of our schools, in our London schools specifically, but is that a big issue faced by yourselves in terms of getting high quality teachers and retention? And is pay, alright, put it up there if it's good comparatively in your country and down there if it's bad. Where would you say the pay for teachers in terms of attracting them is? Average, good pay compared to other professions? Bad pay. Yeah. So again, in a way, you have to be passionate to want to go into teaching because it doesn't pay well. Yes, I remember the discussion. So in a way, that attracts, bizarrely, the ones that you want to attract. But also, again, if you want specialisms in there, mathematics teachers, particularly in this country, we struggle to to find, let alone keep as well. In terms of also making it attractive for students, that marketing has a double benefit, that it makes it attractive for teachers as well. So again, it's that promotion there. And social responsibility came out very much through yours. I must say your list of the top 5 is more interesting than ours was. And we don't put it half as eloquently. We're very blunt in terms of our language. But the main one for UK, for England head teachers was teaching and learning development, professional development, and that continuous building capacity. But looking at number 2 as well, one thing our schools find is talent spotting those good teachers to see which will be good managers is a skill within itself. And it's that balance. Do you take the good teachers out of the classroom, or actually how do you manage that? So that's where our 3rd priority is curriculum, establish goals and expectations, and just look at the bottom one. This is how we put it, as opposed to your listening and adjusting and caring, ensuring an orderly environment. So we've not quite got the same culture. We have in a lot of schools. But we haven't mentioned students once on ours, which is a little sad. But again, I think you can see where our system is moving towards in terms of accountability, budgeting, etc., etc. They focus on the teaching and learning, which is predominantly, but not necessarily the well-being of the students anymore. That was very old labour, and was banished very, very quickly in looking after the whole child. So, but yours are more interesting. So I shall get those typed up for you. Okay, now to look at our system, I'm going to show you a video of an example of one of our academies shortly. It'll be very similar, I'd imagine, in many aspects to your own schools and environments. It is a new build academy, so it looks quite posh, but actually in terms of the thinking, it's one of, I'd say, our leading academy chains and academy trusts. But being as schools came out of this very protected, top-down, funding went to local authorities and then it went to schools, to within 6 months, all funding going to schools and all responsibilities going to schools. The schools had to join up together, really. 1, to get economies of scale, but 2, to look at that issue that we've just seen as their main bugbear, which is to resource the leadership teams that they need and also provide a good variety of professional development. Because what our schools are now doing, whereas it was very top-down, is working collaboratively to try and ensure that they can manage that capacity. Now, to say our schools are working collaboratively, they also come against a problem, that they're in competition with everybody around them for school places. So you've got collaboration versus competition in local areas. So to solve that, partly, they started getting bigger and joining up. And this is what we call a multi-academy trust. As I told you, we have more schools than hobnobs have type of biscuits at the moment. So the multi-academy trust is one governing body. And the governing bodies in England are maybe very different, but they have complete control over the school, not the head teacher, particularly in these larger ones. If you want to sneeze in some of these larger ones, you will have to present it to a governing body and be signed off before you can do so. And the academies underneath don't have to respond to the Secretary of State. It's all left to the governing body at the top, so it protects them in a way.
What does it consist of?
Consist of? In
Well,
terms-
who are the people that are in
who are the people that are in here?
multi-academy?
Multi-academy trust. So I'm going to show you one in a moment. In a multi-academy trust, you will have an overarching governing body. So it will be professionals from the local community or those people interested in supporting schools. For example, I'm governor at 2 schools. So you attend every month, you look at the finances, I look at the ICT. So they're getting professionals from the outside education. But there will also be a head teacher there as chief executive. So there will be a head teacher that overruns it.
Excuse me, do you know the proportion of public and private schools here in
In England, we have 23,000 public schools, state schools. A lot of that estate now is turning into academies. Now, academies are what my mum or anybody else would still see as a state school, but actually they're independent charities. But they're what we class as state schools. The private schools, we're looking, it's still under 4,000. So it's
So
still
200,000 and 4,000.
23,000
23,000
and nearly 4,000. Yeah, yeah. Some of our private schools, interestingly, it might be a step too far, are converting into academies because then they can get funding from parents and funding from government. So we're also getting some,
The private schools also get money from the government.
a little bit now because of this system, because private schools will turn themselves into a charity, and that means that they can charge the parents still, but they can also draw down on government funds. Some are, not all, but some are. So in this model, you've got 4 different academies. Now those academies, one might be in London, one might be in Birmingham, one might be in Newcastle, or they may be all in a very close location. But that is the typical one that you'll see. Now our largest academy chains, our multi-academy trusts, is currently at 60 schools and growing. So you can see that these are becoming organisations within themselves, and they will follow similar curriculum. They will have head of finance, which leaves these schools here, the head teachers, to be head teachers of learning, is the theory, so that they don't have to deal with the admin, but they can be truly focused on the learning within their schools, and then step up when they need to. And this is helping solve our problem with the lack of head teachers coming through. This is a more attractive model, that you've got some protection and some experience at the higher ends. A looser version, because if you don't become an academy in the UK at the moment, the government will make you become one and make you fail to become one at the moment. I'll go into that later. But a looser one is that good schools can just join hands, as you've done, and have protection in the knowledge, the experience, but also the volume in terms of moving through. And finally, academy chains, like the multi-academy trusts, because they are outstanding schools, as soon as a school fails in their area, if I'm a secondary school and academy, I hope you don't mind me saying you fail, but if you as a primary school are failing, I can just come and take you now. So this is solving the problem of our lower achieving schools, that academies are just taking them. As soon as they fail, an academy trust can and will take them on board. So this is the problems that we're facing at the moment. In addition to that, you said about preparing for the workforce, and I mentioned it earlier. We are teaching children to be very good content people, and I agree there needs to be a certain amount of content, but Google also helps a little bit. But we weren't teaching them with any skills at all. And so to solve this problem, we started to look at studio schools and university technical colleges. A very, very different model, and I'm not sure how you deal with that within your schools, whether there are specialist places, whether you deal with that in your whole curriculum. But I'll show you some examples of those later on. And what we're finding is that our secondary schools and primary schools are looking to these university technical colleges for some innovation that they can follow. So these are the test beds really for learning that we're taking further down into schools. Okay. Now, academies, what do they have free them in? Everything. As long as they achieve the outcomes, which somebody was saying earlier, as long as they achieve the outcomes, as long as they achieve the standards, they can do exactly as they choose. They can open 365 days a year if they want to, from 4 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. You might not get any parents in at 4 o'clock in the morning. They can pay their teachers what they want to. They don't have to employ teachers. They can employ specialists and other people. The head teacher at an academy doesn't have to be a qualified head teacher, which is causing a few problems. Their finance, they get complete control over, and they get more finance from the government than they would if they were a state school. They get £25,000 to change from a state school to an academy, and they get 20% more funding because it's not at the local authority level anymore. So they have a lot more money, a lot more freedoms. The main thing that we look to academies to do is really, because they've got complete freedom with the curriculum and because they are achieving high results, we look to them for curriculum development and curriculum growth predominantly in our good academies. So, question. What can leaders do? There are 3 questions up there and 4. I'm just going to concentrate on one. What can leaders do to ensure that actually their curriculum is continuously developing, innovative and fit for purpose at the end?
Just want to share with you some thought that when you bring a system like that to a country, when you look at a McKinsey report, it says, you know, you can bring that type of autonomous when you are sure that you've got high quality already. Many countries, like in South Africa, you would never dare do something like that. So definitely for me, when I look at it, is how do you make sure that you've got quality teachers? And I think it starts from your education colleges to induction of those teachers at schools, and from induction of those teachers at schools, monitoring them, and Udi had an idea of actually establishing research and development at schools, which I actually like.
Yeah. I'm just going to put that as a separate one. It's going to end up like doctor's handwriting soon and just be a line, but don't worry, I can read it.
No, you write so fast, I'm amazed.
In
You do
English,
everything so
she
fast.
likes so
In English, I mean, everything has been in 5 minutes.
Be careful, because none of it's spelled correctly at all. Don't misspell it. So, thank you. You can just pass the microphone back.
Yeah, okay. Well, so what can leaders do? First of all, none of us is a leader, so we're going to give the teacher's point of view. I hope you can make progress. We thought about best practice sharing as a model to improve it. Also peer coaching. So we were talking about some early adopters. There are always in every school a teacher who adopts technology or methodologies earlier than others, and they can be good coaches, peer coaches. Also, Sergey, right? Suggested joint approach to research as a way of collaboration, perhaps among different teachers or even different schools.
I was going to say, and that one was split out, so the aspects of research are different parts of the curriculum, and then they joined back to bring that curriculum together.
Yeah, kind of interdisciplinary. I don't know if you call it like that.
That's a good word, but I probably can't spell it. I'll try.
It's Latin, so we can spell it.
Okay. That's just doctor's handwriting. It's also really spelled correctly.
We also talked about collaboration and exchange among teachers from the same area, so that they can discuss at content level from different areas, so that they can share methodologies, and even from different schools, regions, or countries, as we are doing now. And also updating teachers, both in the subject, in the content they teach, and also in the methodology or the technologies they can add to their teaching practices.
There was also mentioned there as well that the gentleman just left the table, but that the government put down a curriculum that was basically outcomes and titles, and actually then that was given to the schools to come up with the content and the approaches for that.
Yeah,
So call
based
that
in Ukraine.
wiki
But-
curriculum?
Yeah, in Argentina
Start
it's quite
with-
similar. The government gives what in Spanish is called the NUPS. Help me with what's the
Basic.
the basic,
The basic
the
line.
N is
the
for
basic-
nucleus. I don't know. So the core, the titles we call them, and then each school is supposed to fill in and complete the contents and what and how you're going to teach that and adjust again.
That's what we're doing all the
Yeah,
time.
to your population, to your community. That's it.
Thank you very much. I agree with with their schools are ready or not, and I'll talk about that in a minute. I agree with your approach. I'm not sure we are. Yes, sir.
Okay, if contacting with the universities impacts on the school output, I'd examine the input as well. So what have I do to meet their requirements, and what shall I teach to the incoming students?
So it's not only what do they need when they're leaving the skills, but what do you need them to be when they get there? Yeah.
For sure.
Fantastic, thank you.
We want to add 2 points. First of all, we think that you have to establish in the school a culture of learning, that the head teacher and the staff are learning all the time. And if it's in the culture of the school, new initiative will, in such a school, will rise rapidly than in another school. You have to have a vision in the school that don't come from the headmaster to the teachers, but it has to be built by the whole staff of the school. And when you believe in something, you will be very committed to that. You have to encourage and enable new programs that ideas that come from your staff members in the school, to do a pilot, but not to encourage them. We have a lot of stuff to learn and so on, and to assess them, to see what change they brought to the student learning. But the fundamental thing, I think, that the culture of the school is that the school is learning all the time. It's a community that is learning all the time. That's inspire everyone in the school to try to do something else.
Absolutely. That reflective practitioner and that lifelong learning approach. And
Yes.
That's where our great schools are coming in. Thank you.
Great school.
Somebody said to me once you said about the vision and it being owned by everybody.
Yes.
Somebody said to me once, when was the last time you washed a hire car? You don't look after it if it's not yours. So I did respond that there's no time I've washed my own car, let alone a hire car. But it is that if they don't have input into it, it'll be the worst idea in the world. If they have a little bit of input into it, it's the best idea in the world and they'll make it work. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Okay. We were discussing of settle observatories with the discipline university, and also detect the demand of the market first. Effectively detect the state of art of each discipline also.
So the best of the best.
Yeah. And
not only in terms of what the companies demand, in contact with experts that can show the tendencies.
Yeah, working with on the tendencies, Trends.
Because companies and markets will know what they need now, but not the sort of the future trends as well. So it's keeping both.
Yeah, that's why we talk about trends.
Thank you very much. Again, if I ask that question here, there'd be very different answers, and which is interesting. That one of the most predominant ones that came through was that link with the universities. That link with the universities, but also sharing best practice in multiple forms. And nobody mentioned technology there yet, but that again can help that type of best practice sharing. But I like the culture of learning and the reflective practitioners, and that's where good to great schools go. I'll show you that in a moment. This was what we said in terms of the good to great, the qualities of head teachers. I will go back and show you those two academies, but I'm conscious it's coffee time and I'll leave the videos on when you've got a coffee. But actually, these were the qualities of leaders that were identified by leaders. Nothing there says financial management, does it really? But you've got to have a good sense of humour and be fairly single-minded in these approaches to it. And actually, that insert text there was put there on purpose, but I think we've begun to start to look at that during this session. The elements that you just outlined there, the priorities that you outlined earlier, are all examples of how we move from being very good to being excellent. It's that difference in quality, and it's that difference in the soul and the culture of schools. And all the other stuff, as I said to an Ofsted inspector that once came through my door, I'm bothered about the kids and not your paperwork. Luckily I still came out with outstanding, otherwise the head teacher would have killed me. But that worked very well. But this session we're looking specifically at strategic leadership of ICT, an area very close to my heart, and in England an area very close to the majority of head teachers' hearts. I'm going to come back onto university technical colleges just before we go in there, because I think it links well from the last discussions that we had. We were saying, how do we keep that curriculum innovation going, especially when we're all in different areas and different circumstances. And you said linking in with the universities and the skill sets that we need in the future. I wish we'd think a little bit more proactively here, but that's what we are doing. First of all, I'm just going to show you a quick look at an academy, the Multi-Academy Trust. The gentleman speaking, I work with a lot, Frank Green, and he is the Chief Executive of the Lee Longfield Trust, but he's also now been promoted to the Schools Commissioner for England, so he now works in the department as well as managing the schools as well. So that's how much say our head teachers are having at the moment. I'm just going to show you a starter in terms of the video. This is one of our leading schools that has not only got now secondary schools, but is also bringing on primary schools into the board, and has just opened his first university technical college that we're going to have a look at the structure moving forward. I'm going to stop these videos and move on as soon as we've seen aspects. It's just to give you a flavour, but the full videos are in the Dropbox should you wish to watch them as well. Watch this, after that build-up it's not going to work.
My goal ever since I came here has been about the transformation of learning, to create a culture and an environment where far more young people than ever before can succeed in achieving goals that have previously been the preserve of the academic elite of our country.
The Lee City Technology College was a very successful school, and I think when we had the opportunity to put up a new building, we had a chance to rethink where we were and where we wanted to be. And we felt that we could come up with a school and a new structure that would create a new kind of learning that would take the school forward over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years and build on the school's current success.
One of the bolder things that we did was to break the school up into 4 small schools and create not just heads of house, but head teachers to be responsible for those schools with a set of responsibilities and job description that matched that of a head teacher in the day-to-day work of of that college.
Within that one building there are 4 schools, 4 head teachers.
All the students were given the opportunity to spend a considerable amount of time both designing learning spaces they liked, looking at the day structure, the way colours and shapes of rooms and the kinds of things they would like to see in a school, which were then fed through to the design team.
Just going to stop it there. The next video is Frank talking, but Frank Green has now several of these schools, and within each school they went for a human scale education approach, because he's got 1,200 students. To get that level of personalisation that was talked about earlier, they actually split the school up. So you've got the 1,200 there that can access the dining and the sports and the PE facilities, and then within them they had 4 schools, and these are legal entities of themselves with students no more than 300. The idea being there was that, and I've taught in a secondary school, and I admit it put me off teaching, sorry. But in a primary school, Jimmy would walk in and I'd know automatically that there was a problem or an issue, or he was tired, or X, Y and Z. When I taught maths in a secondary school, I was lucky if I knew any, not any, I was lucky if I knew all of their names, let alone what their problems were when they came in. There were too many children for me to really know what their next step in learning was. So they did this human scale approach, and now one teacher will only see 80 students within that school. So a maths teacher will only ever see 80 students. Many things it does: competition between the schools, specialisms between the schools, shared facilities, but also it came from America's charter schools, I think, in terms of it works well in highly deprived areas. The level of violence, vandalism and crime is directly related to the size of schools in areas we found as well. And going to this smaller approach does that. Now, one reason the academies, besides being very good heads, being very accountable, being very data driven, are leading the way in terms of technology within our schools. They always have been. They came from city technology colleges. They are generally head teachers with engineering or X, Y and Z, and they rely heavily on technology, but also on the environment. You'll see that school is a very plush school, and the majority of our academies will invest quite significantly on improving and re-improving and trialling and looking at their environments. But it worries me. We spend £10,000 on computer equipment, and how often do we actually look at whether it's making an impact before we make that spend? I've seen head teachers go out and buy 400 iPads. Last year there was a speaker at BET that had gone out, he was a head teacher, and if I knew his name, I'd name him and shame him, but I can't remember. He'd gone out and brought 400 iPads for his school, and his opening line was, "I haven't told the teachers. I'll just give them to the students when we get in on January the 1st. And he was talking at BET. Now, Apple had a drive to get 1 million tablets into England schools 18 months ago, and they probably have succeeded. But there's no thinking about the impact that it's going to have on technology. I've got 16-year-old students that can't do coursework because they're trying to do it on something a little bit bigger than that. They need this. And again, it's looking at fitness for purpose. So it worries me that we don't trial and then scale up in terms of technology. And it worries me even more that you can spend 10,000 on computers and not monitor it. The majority of our schools will spend 5 million to 20 million on school buildings and not monitor whether they're having an impact. Again, so it's down to that good leadership to monitor change. This man does. This man does. So here he's talking, he's just built 2 new schools, and he's talking about what he's going to trial next.
The new buildings are one step along the journey of transformation that began with the opening of the college in 1990, and that journey of transformation to what a 21st century school should really be like is, for us, a next big step to create those buildings. We're splitting colleges, each with their own principals. So we've got the small school concept coming in, and I've recently appointed two of those principals from outside, two we appointed internally, and their role initially is to get that new model up and running effectively. However, of course, it's only part of a much longer journey, because with the pace of change, technological change in our society today, then we don't know yet what changes are likely to come in 5 or 10 years' time. But they are going to be technologically driven, and they will change the way we live our lives. Because if we think today of things like iPods and MP3 players and blogging and podcasting, we're in a situation which 5 years ago, none of those words even existed in the language. Where would it be 5 years from now? And how do we make proper use, example, of all of those things in an educational context? Because children are regularly using MP3 players to download this and download that, and we're experimenting with some podcasting ourselves at the moment, putting that onto so students can download off our network for learning. So where it's going to go is absolutely unknown. However, we've got to keep thinking about that journey and creating that vision, however fearful it may be, that the reality turns out to be very different.
Okay, so what I would class as one of our, well, he's just got the job as the schools commissioner, so he's got to be good. But he's continually exploring, researching, and what Frank does that not many people do, and we don't do in education, is if it's not working, he'll throw it out. And we don't tend to have that attitude. We keep on going with things. But he does research into this, and as I say, he did some research in his school in Kent, which is a deprived area. And they found out, you know, they tell you not to talk for more than 20 minutes because people can't take it. He found out the average attention span for his learners was 7 minutes. So passive learning was not really an option for him to go down in the school. He needed a very active intervention type learning program for those students. And for some students, a different type of curriculum completely. Now this is the government's vision to start getting those children into jobs. And the difference in the curriculum of the university technical colleges, where we're looking for inspiration to really take us forward, I think we are quite technology-led, is the university technical colleges. Now, between 14 and 16, university technical colleges are for 14 to 19-year-olds, no more than 800 students, very specific. And when they're 14, 60% of their time is in school, but 40% of their time is with local businesses on programs of study. When they reach 16, 40% of their time is in school, 60% of their time is in local businesses. And from 14, this is harsh, and it's very harsh for the children, from 14 they leave the school timetable and they go to work from 9 till 5 for not 52, 47 weeks of the year, and they have no homework. So it is like a job in school and out of school. For that to work, and I don't know what the possibilities are in your areas, this was a university technical college we did in Nottingham, Genogley, ICT and business. And you can see their partners, Toshiba, Rolls-Royce, aerospace, astronomy. They joined up with local businesses to make those job opportunities, but also to bring in the specialist teachers from those companies to advise on the curriculum, but also then to deliver the curriculum as well. And real work challenges, real life situations, real productions. And I'm going to talk about this later on, but as well, we're consumers in this country. You only have to walk down Oxford Street to see that we just spend. Online spend, shop spend. We're consumers, and we were the same on the internet, constantly just consuming the knowledge in. And recently we've just had a review of the curriculum to say we're enough of being consumers, we have to be creators now. We have to be creators with that technology. Rather than use an app in school, I wanted children to develop the apps in school. So again, we're looking from that shift, which takes a lot of staff confidence and a lot of teacher confidence, to move from consumers to creators and create learning. And of course they get additional funding for specialist equipment. So they look very different to our schools. Again, if you're interested in those, we've got 20 coming up per year. We frequently collect videos on them. I'll send them to and if ever you visit again, it's definitely worth going and having a look. Very local. So, well, it sounds like you are, more than we are, so let's get straight into it. Are we really preparing them for the curriculum, to meet the standards, but also those lifelong skills? And how do we, as adults, facilitate that learning? I eavesdropped on a conversation when I came in about the fact that we'll never keep up with students and the technology. I've got a 4-year-old nephew that can beat me on Nintendo or whatever it is, Wii. Can beat me looking the other way. And he still beats me with a cheeky little smile on his face. He's red-haired, 4 years old, and even when, and this is how competitive my family is. When he was out of the room, I adjusted his settings to very difficult and mine to very easy, and I still lost. But that sums up our competitive family. We don't take prisoners, and we even cheat with children of our own blood. So, but we don't keep up with them. But what we can do is manage that learning and orchestrate that learning into something that's effective. Research shows in the ICT world that the most powerful tool is social media. But how scared are we to use that in schools because of what you identified on the first priority, keeping children safe and safeguarding and well-being? How do we capture that most powerful of tool, communication, collaboration, but ensure that our learners are safe and being responsible digital? But what I think is, if we are not afraid of technology and we plan it so that our vision is here, but our staff are here, so let's plan to get here. Then let's plan to get here and put processes in place. For example, mobile phones in schools. We have many secondary schools where the children are allowed to take in their own mobile device. That can be a tablet, it can be a phone. We do that because it supports funding and because we'll have limited funds to keep renewing and refreshing. So we know that we're going to eventually have to go to bring your own device. But for a teacher to manage what could be 20 different types of phones in a classroom learning and not know that they're going off to text X, Y, and Z and all the rest of it, it's very difficult. One school might ban them completely. Some other schools are using like a traffic light system. So if it's red, there's no phones allowed in the class at all, they stay in the bags. If it's green, they can be on the table all the time and you can use them as and when. And if it's amber, they can come out when you're told and they go back in when you're told. So again, there are strategies that we can use to begin to allow technology to come in at a point it's comfortable with our teachers. Because if it's not comfortable with our teachers, then again, the learning is searching, Googling and all the rest of it rather than the active learning. So I think a lot of it is professional development, and I think a lot of it is going as and at the pace you need to make sure that people are on board and that it's not hindering the learning, but it's in helping it.
With small children in kindergarten and elementary school, when I used the computers, they were always working together in twos. Because otherwise they're like this.
Yeah. And I still recommend.
The world doesn't count.
Yeah.
And the strategy there is that the one that knows more is always with the less, with the child that knows less.
And I'd encourage that.
This was something that they did together, but it was prohibited to give one child one computer.
No. I mean, personally.
No, very small children.
Yeah.
Now with the iPads and everything, it's different. But when they start sharing, they don't only talk to the computer, they talk to somebody else.
To be honest, I'd still recommend that be the case. I mean, when we're looking at new designs and the technology, with the mobile devices, the tablets, we tend to use small triangular tables. So that again, it's not this silo learning, but it's 3 people around a table. And they tend to, what I call argue learning. They tend to debate and argue more in terms of that. But I think solo working on computer and going free for all is very dangerous. very dangerous. And we've gone through employers' needs. Now, I hate it. You'll go to technology talks and they show you a picture of a classroom in 1940. And then they show you a picture of a classroom in 2012 and it's no different. It annoys me because I do think we are getting different classrooms. And in this classroom, you'll see active learning happening.
Hello, my name is Cameron. I'm a Year 6 Digital Leader. And since we've had...
You'll see... Wait a minute, Cameron. He's the most adult person I've ever met in my life. And he's 12. He scares the living bejeebers out of me. But in this school, now, this has taken a long time to get to in terms of the culture, and this teacher is an outstanding judged teacher. Again, the environment that you're going to look at, I wouldn't recommend going to unless you've got teachers that are very used to active learning. You may not see it from this classroom, but there are 30 students in this classroom and there are not 30 seats. And there are no more than 6 seats of the same type. So children can't sit like this. They will be sitting on couches, they will be sitting at machines, they will be sitting round tables with chairs that wobble, so you can't sit for too long. Okay, so this is a very extreme environment. But what I want you to look at here is the independence of learning in what is a safe environment. We worry about social media. This is Wales, and Wales have gone for an all-Wales learning platform that I will show you later, with every school having their own learning platform, which includes wikis, blogs and social media. So it's a very safe environment. If I walk past a screen and I recognise it as that, I know that there can't be any cyberbullying or anything else going on in there. So you take away part of that risk by putting in the controls. Okay, I'll just play this. It's only students, no teachers.
Computers, iPads and Macs in our school. We get to do stuff multi-platform. If we have both the LG computers, we can have go on the iPads or on the Macs. The best thing about Hub is that it's multi-platform. It can go on any of these things I've said.
We can set up discussions on our class pages, and we can discuss with the other pupils in our class about our homework or our school trips. We can also email teachers about anything, and they're able to respond really easily. So instead of just sat at your house with your homework thinking, I don't know how to do this, you can just go online, access Hub, and just email your teachers.
I enjoy using Hub because it's a good education platform to use, and you can access it anywhere you want, at home, in school, at your friend's house. As long as you've got your computer and you log in, you're fine. And it's also good because you can do your homework at home without all the paper and the stress of finding the paper.
Hub is monitored by parents and teachers, so it's completely secure. To access Hub, you need to log on, and if you don't have a log on, you can't get onto Hub. Anything that's being said that you don't feel comfortable with, you can press the see up button and report what's being said, so then it's being reported, so it won't really happen again. We use Hub as a safe email. We can use it as a wiki. We can use it as a blog. It can be used for lots of other things. Our parents have access to see anything that we post if we let them onto our accounts, which most people do. I think most of the parents are very happy with what we've been doing on Hub, but it is important that we know how to be safe while using it. But parents know a lot about that.
You can put our homework on there. Hub is a very good resource for learning. My favourite device is iPads because I can go onto the iPad and then it's touchscreen, and I can go onto Hub and stuff like that.
The iPads and iPods are all password protected, and all the apps are tested by teachers so that they're suitable for children.
It gives us a better education because we get to learn having fun. So we don't want to go home and we want to come to school.
It does encourage people to come to school because you've got a reason, and technology is really good for that.
It's also good because you can access it with whatever you need. You can access it with iPads, iPods, iPhones, computers, anything really.
Learning our best and growing together. Now in that school, I think some of the issues and concerns we may have with technology are taken care of in such that it is a tier 4 data security. So put it this way, I've had 2 journalists email me and had their emails withheld. And I have to keep calling them up and asking what language they've put in their email. So it disseminates language, so it won't take that. But also the child said on there, they press a COP button. COP is our internet safety. And you don't have to use language necessarily to bully somebody. So again, there is that extra resource that if a child feels that something is appropriate, there's one button that records their screen for them, and again that's sent to the head teacher to be monitored and dealt with. So in that environment, would I want a lot of children on Twitter or on Facebook? No. If I walk past 30 screens, if we're all doing different types of learning, have I got the security that that's been taking place? Then yes. You'll see on that thing as well, you didn't see the teacher you didn't see a teacher, but you didn't see a teacher use technology. She doesn't in the classrooms. She lets the learners use it. And she lets the learners set it up for them. She's not afraid of it, but she's not fantastically au fait with it. So she organises the learning and then allows them to go through it. And when there are resources online, she doesn't have to create them. So a high technology class with a teacher that's confident as a teacher, but not confident with technology. And, you know, the landscape is changing in terms of this. I do an e-safety quiz where I ask you the meanings of several words, and most people get about 10 out of 20. Truth is, there are some words like mashing and pulping and other things that I have not got a clue what they are. And there are acronyms that I haven't got a clue what they are. But again, we need to take the best from these. If you've not used, anyone use Bebo? It's like a child-friendly Facebook. And Twitter, from our latest survey of teachers, is their preferred method of professional development. So teachers are going to Twitter for professional development. I must admit, pre-bet, if you could follow the right people, again, that's what I use to keep informed as to what's happening. We can't all keep informed of technology, we just can't. I'd spend all day, every day on it, and I'm still behind. So again, you rely on other people with specialisms and take them on board. Right, but in all the programmes I've done, there have been 3 elements, and I'm glad it skipped past that first one quickly, because it doesn't matter. Every programme I've done that's technology related, whether it be interactive whiteboards, virtual learning environments, laptops for teachers, mobile devices for students, tablets for learners, the technology doesn't necessarily matter. It has to be fit for purpose, but it's the learning and the learning outcomes that we need to focus on. And then it's the leadership of those. Yeah, you wouldn't want to be second, would you? Can you imagine? I'm not calling head teachers wolves. It was purely the charge. I have to change that screen. It was purely the charge and the drive and the passion. I promise, don't lynch me. But again, it's that learning and leadership. We've got the technology that will continue to grow and change. We must focus on how we can exploit that and discuss that in terms of the learning, and only leaders can do that, and good teachers, which I still call leaders. Now, on your tables, I've just given you a short booklet to go away with. Again, you've got most of this. But we call this better outcomes, better expectations. And in terms of any technology drive, and we are technology heavy in this country, in terms of any technology drive, we say that there are 9 key areas, not in silo but interdependent, that leaders and teachers need to consider. And let's just take a look at those. In the centre, strategy and change leadership. What are the best practices for getting that action-led research school? How do we put that into the culture? How do we drive? How do we monitor? How do we ensure that the infrastructure, etc., is there? In the next outer circle, learning and teaching. A constant look at pedagogy and how technology facilitates that pedagogy and developing pedagogies. I'm not going to say new, there's very little that's new. We just do it better. Living and working, that future stuff we've been talking about. 80-20 Learning Beyond the Walls. Stephen Heppel, you may see him at VET, talks about educating the parents and you educate the child. We use technology a lot to communicate with parents and teach parents. One of the best examples I've seen is this virtual learning environment has a private space for parents. And in that private space for parents, I as the maths teacher will demonstrate how I teach long division. 2-minute video and it'll go. The English teacher may do a 2-minute video on the phonics for the week. And the parents can go and watch it in private before the child comes back with their homework and support them without looking stupid. And again, we had a lot to sort of learn and work with the parents. So how can we use technology to support learning beyond the walls? Many of you heard of the flipped classroom as well? Yeah. Where they go and they'll actually watch, particularly useful I think in mathematics, where you'll watch the methodology. That's the easy bit. It's the application of that methodology that's difficult. So some of our schools are using this so that their homework is to watch the methodology, and when they come back in, then the teacher is there to facilitate that learning. Now, I can be as scared of technology as I want to, but I can stand in front of a video and scribe and teach in my normal manner. And actually, I'm still having a great deal of impact on that child by using some form of technology. Round the outside, value for money. If it doesn't impact on learning, don't buy it. Have you seen those voting tools that you can use with interactive whiteboards? Vote for A, B, C or D. Do you like them? I prefer this, to be honest. For the money that they cost when we put them in, I felt there was very little gain. Some secondary schools use them better than others. Logistics and provision, have you got the infrastructure? The amount of schools that we get that buy these 400 iPads and then phone us up and say they don't work. Well, is your wireless capable of them? What? They're used to 6 computers in the classroom. They're not used to 200 children walking in with their iPads into the dining room and expecting them all to work. So it's looking at that infrastructure, connectivity. Is it sufficient for now, and will it be sufficient for where you move into in the future? One of the biggest failing blocks in our country was, and is better now, but was the broadband and the connectivity. So we look at those 9 areas, and I've given you a short booklet that just prompts questions in terms of those 9 areas and thinking where we are. So I've just left that in with you for now. There's also a couple of links in there to send you to different resources such as the self-review framework. What we do here that you may have seen, you may be familiar with, is to ask people to really critically look at where they are in terms of technology use from the learning point of view, from a leadership and management point of view, to say where they are and benchmark where they are. 2 reasons for that. 1, to look at the next steps of where they're going to, but 2, to open their eyes as to the benefits of technology in areas that they may not have thought of. So we use something called the self-review framework. And I've slightly adapted it for our purposes, but in the handouts that you've given, you'll see 2 sheets after page 11 that there's 10 questions on a sliding scale. So the first question is, ICT has a clear and demonstrable impact on the progress and achievement of our pupils. This is in your own school vision. Strongly disagree? Where is it? Okay, midway? Get in there. Okay. And finally, the one that sometimes holds it back. Our school has a comprehensive and effective e-safety strategy, which ensures all pupils and staff are safe. I think it's good enough. Strongly disagree? Woo! Teaching, learning up there, community up there, safety. Oh, you're a brave man. Okay, strongly disagree? Strongly agree. All right, all the e-safety people are over here. All the risk takers seem to be over there. Okay. So again, we use, that's an opener. The document and the review within itself is much more detailed, and I've put different examples in there that you can look to move forward. But actually, sometimes it's an eye-opener to do that yourselves and give it to your leadership team and give it to a few students and get the different perceptions of actually the effectiveness and impact of technology within your area. I'll leave that with you. Now looking at the sexy stuff, as we say. These images were all taken in the last 12 months from press of UK schools. And this will give you an idea of what we're starting to explore and what you'll see very, very much so on Thursday within Beth. At the top left-hand corner, again, not something I'd invest in personally, very expensive with limited impact at the moment, but 3D visualization. Now, when doctors go to university, if they use technology and 3D technology specifically within the first year, apparently the results in the test were 46% more accurate when they came to testing at the end of the year. The BET award winner 2 years ago was virtual dentistry. And now we have in our universities holographic dentistry that you touch it, it's not actually there, and you can work on it. So no more do we use half bodies, yes. No more do we use people for dentistry, and actually, again, that's taking it from industry and bringing it into our schools. That example there was literacy, and they used 3D technology and their results improved by 16%. That was only one class, but they used 3D technology to look at different aspects. Next to it, iPads. Now, for me, I'd stick an iPad in Foundation and Key Stage 1, so 4 and 5 year olds, because it's touch friendly. Yeah, unless there's an Apple salesman here, I wouldn't use them after that. I don't think they are pupil learning friendly devices yet. I know that Apple are trying to come on more. For 4 year olds and 5 year olds, they can touch it, they can manipulate it, they can access learning. I would use different technologies moving throughout the age groups. But those two children there are not consumers of apps, they are creators of apps. And they have got, at the time of this, they had 2 apps on sale on iTunes U. One was a doorbell ringer, so that if somebody rang your doorbell at home, you could answer it, like a telephone, and say, I'm in the bath at the moment, can you come back later? Because they were having lots of burglaries in the area. So that worked very well. I think I'm trying to do that at home with my mum when she keeps checking if I'm home, I think. Open 24 hours, virtual learning environments. We're standards driven, we need to attract students, and a lot of places will rely on learning outside of the classroom to make sure for revision, for other works, that we actually engage that. Cloud computing, Office 365, are many of you using Office 365? Yeah, so again, free to schools at the moment, with free email, free Excel, Word, PowerPoint, OneNote, which I think is lovely, and Link, which is Microsoft's version of Skype. So that's free at the moment. We're putting that in every single school in Wales, so they've got global address list. Any teacher can contact any teacher in Wales, flick of a switch, and the children are connected. So there's huge potential.
And what about SkyDrive or part of
SkyDrive, yeah. In the Wales contract that we're working with, the space that they will have on SkyDrive is 25 gig. 25 gig. And
for schools?
For schools. Per pupil, yeah, in schools. Yeah. And 50 gig on email. Yeah. So quite impressive at the moment. 3D printing. I wouldn't build a secondary school without putting in a 3D printer. There are around 2,000, 3,000